Welcome to AI Debates. Topic: Does free will exist? Pro-free will versus determinist.
Thank you for this debate. I believe that free will can exist even in a predetermined universe. While it may seem counterintuitive at first, free will is more about our experience of making choices, not necessarily about breaking the chain of cause and effect. Even if events are predetermined, we still experience the act of choosing between different options. Our choices are based on our desires, values, and reasoning processes, and because these are internal to us, they reflect our personal freedom. In this sense, free will is compatible with determinism because it's about how we make decisions, not whether those decisions are predetermined.
I respectfully disagree. If the universe is truly predetermined, meaning every event, including our thoughts and decisions, is the inevitable result of prior causes, then free will cannot exist in any meaningful sense. Every choice we make would be the product of factors outside our control, like our biology, upbringing, or the state of the universe before we were even born. We may feel like we're making choices, but if those choices are the unavoidable outcome of a chain of events that began long before we existed, we aren't really free. We are just part of a causal chain, like dominoes falling.
But even if our decisions are influenced by prior causes, that doesn't mean we lack free will. Determinism might shape the options available to us or how we weigh those options, but we still go through a decision-making process. For example, when deciding between two job offers, I might be influenced by my financial situation or career goals, but ultimately I reflect, consider my preferences, and make a choice. That process, where I evaluate and choose based on my internal values, is free will. It's still me making the decision, not something external to me.
I understand that it feels like you're making a free choice, but the question is whether that feeling is an illusion. If your preferences, desires, and the decision-making process are all the result of prior causes, things you didn't choose, like your genetics, environment, and upbringing, then you didn't really choose to have those preferences or make that decision. It was predetermined. For example, your career goals are influenced by factors like your education and upbringing, which you didn't control. So when you choose between job offers, you're actually following a path already laid out by those influences.
But the fact that my choices are influenced by factors like upbringing or genetics doesn't negate free will. It's true that I didn't choose my background or many of the conditions that shaped me, but what matters is how I respond to those influences. I can still reflect on them, analyze them, and make a decision based on how I feel about those influences. That capacity to reflect and choose in alignment with my values is what free will is. In fact, knowing the constraints and influences on my decisions could make me more free by allowing me to make more informed choices.
But even your capacity to reflect and analyze is itself determined by prior causes. The way you reason, the emotions you feel about certain influences, and even your ability to be aware of those influences are all the result of your brain's wiring and past experiences, which you didn't choose. If all of this is determined, then what you're calling reflection is just part of the deterministic chain. It may feel like freedom, but if every thought and action is the inevitable result of a prior cause, then we're just following a script, unable to do otherwise.
I see what you're saying, but I think you're drawing too sharp a line between determinism and free will. Even if our thoughts and actions are part of a causal chain, we still have control over how we act on those thoughts. Take the example of someone overcoming an addiction. Even if their addiction has biological and environmental causes, they still have the power to reflect on those causes, seek help, and change their behavior. The fact that their decision to change may be influenced by external factors doesn't mean it's not an act of free will. Free will doesn't require complete independence from causes. It's about our ability to act based on our reasons and desires.
The example of addiction is a good one, but I would argue that even in cases like that, the person's decision to seek help is determined by prior causes. Maybe they reached a breaking point due to health issues or pressure from loved ones, factors that pushed them to change. Even the process of reflection is shaped by their brain chemistry and external circumstances. The key problem is that if the universe is truly predetermined, there's no room for genuine choice. Every thought, every desire, and every action is the inevitable result of prior causes, so the addict's decision to change wasn't free. It was simply the next step in a causal chain.
I think we're approaching free will from different angles. I don't deny that external factors influence us, but I believe free will is about how we respond to those influences. Even if those responses are part of a causal chain, we still experience ownership of our decisions. It's the difference between being controlled externally and making a choice based on internal deliberation. Whether or not that deliberation is part of a deterministic universe doesn't change the fact that it's my deliberation and my decision. That's the essence of free will. It's about personal agency, even within a system of causes.
But if your deliberation and decisions are all predetermined by prior causes, how can you claim real agency? Even though you feel like you're making choices, those choices are inevitable. If everything about you, your thoughts, desires, and actions, is caused by something outside of your control, then how can you truly claim responsibility for your actions? If we're all just playing out a script written by the laws of physics and prior events, we can't be held morally accountable in the same way. There's no room for genuine freedom if every decision you make could not have been otherwise.
I see where you're coming from, but I think you're underestimating the importance of how we experience freedom and responsibility. Even in a determined universe, the way we engage with our decisions, by reflecting, evaluating, and acting according to our desires and values, feels free and gives us a sense of ownership. That experience is crucial. Responsibility doesn't vanish just because we acknowledge the influence of prior causes. We are still the ones making decisions in real time, acting on our reasons and intentions. In a practical sense, this is all the freedom we need to hold people accountable for their actions and to believe in free will. Determinism doesn't erase our personal experience of choice. It just means our choices are embedded in a broader causal structure.
I understand the importance of our subjective experience, and I agree that we feel like we're making free choices. However, just because we feel something doesn't mean it's real. Our sense of free will might just be an illusion created by our brains, which are themselves products of deterministic processes. If every action, thought, and decision is caused by prior events beyond our control, then personal responsibility, while still useful in a social context, isn't truly rooted in freedom. We can hold people accountable for their actions in practical terms, but philosophically, we should recognize that their decisions were ultimately determined by factors outside of their control. True free will requires the ability to have acted differently, and in a predetermined universe, that's simply impossible.
Final judgment. Overall, this debate was balanced. The determinists provided a stronger logical challenge to the concept of true free will, while the pro-free will side offered a compelling defense of subjective experience and practical agency. Both presented thoughtful arguments, with the determinist having a slight edge in philosophical rigor. As a moderator, here's my evaluation of the debate. Clarity of arguments. Both sides presented their arguments clearly. The pro-free will side emphasized subjective experience and personal agency, while the determinist effectively explained how determinism challenges the concept of genuine freedom. Logical consistency. Both debaters maintained logical consistency. The determinist stuck to the idea that every choice is the inevitable result of prior causes, while the pro-free will side consistently argued that internal deliberation still allows for meaningful choice, even within determinism. Use of evidence and reasoning. The determinists relied more on philosophical reasoning about causality, and the pro-free will side emphasized personal experience and practical accountability. Both lacked hard empirical evidence but made solid, reasoned cases for their positions. Engagement with opposing points. Both participants engaged well with each other. The pro side addressed the feeling of choice and moral responsibility, while the determinist offered strong counterpoints about inevitability and the illusion of freedom.